Because I know if I would have gone down that path, I would have known exactly how I would have looked and felt at 43. If I would have stayed on the same path as I was in my 20s and 30s. But I decided to do something. I decided to go on my own path, my own journey, make my own decisions, not be pressured by what others expect from me. Welcome to another episode of Mindset Mastery. I'm your host, Araujo, and I want to thank you for joining me for the special edition of Mindset Mastery. And, there was this whole notion that, certain things need to be done on a certain day. I mean, that's what I live by. That's what I believe. And I'm a big believer that, things have to be done the way you said it. But over the years, I've realized that, doing the things that I do and doing the things that you do will compound on itself if you simply just stick to the simple routines, right? To the things that almost seem meaningless per day. The things that almost seem meaningless when it's done only, today or tomorrow or the day after that. But it's what happens after a while that really just shocks me. I mean, sometimes I just sit in disbelief of what we've created in our own personal lives. And it gets me thinking about the whole notion of, does what I do matter? Does what I do matter? And I think we have to ask ourselves that question on a consistent basis, because on the short term, it doesn't feel like it matters much. It doesn't feel like what you're doing today is going to really impact the future. And, I just turned, which is insane, right? I just turned 43 years old a couple days ago, and I did a lot of reflecting of really just thinking about that one question, does what I do matter? And as we were just enjoying some time together as a family, and I see the way my daughters are interacting with each other, with their friends. We had the opportunity to, not only take our daughters with us, but their friends, and take on that financial. It's not really that, that expense on as well. And I was just so thankful to be in a position where I can do that with no issue, right? And as I reflect and I start seeing that what I do matter, it really gets me thinking about how we have to think about ourselves in the future, how the decisions we make today is really going to impact everything that we do in the future, how, our finances look, how our health is, how our marriage is. It's everything with that one question, does what I do matter? And when we go through the process of trying to grow, when we go through the process of pushing our thresholds, there's always this thought of, does it really matter? We could go dark from this point and say, does it really matter? Things are gonna, I'm gonna die one day, right? It could go really dark to that point where it's like, does it really matter? Why am I working so hard? This is something that's putting a lot of stress on my family. This is something that, we're constantly pushing the envelope. Does it really matter? And, as I start looking through my Facebook memories, I started looking at, as I started documenting my life in 2014. And on this day, there's this unique feature. It says memories, and then it tells you every day what you were doing on this day. And I spent some time on my birthday just going through it, and I saw myself doing the same thing. Started out at the gym, hanging out with my family, and enjoying some time away. I mean, we've been doing this for quite some time, where we just kind of go out for a few days for my birthday. And all this really mattered. Like, it's really hard to fathom or to believe, how it all accumulates over time. And there's this story about, how it takes bamboo like 5 years to really mature and grow and sprout, 8 to 10 feet into the air. But for the first 5 years, things are working underground where there's not a lot of results to be seen. Like the foundation of it all, the root system that it's built, right? The health of the overall life cycle of the bamboo, and you probably heard this analogy, it doesn't really come into fruition until 5 years later. And as I started looking at my progression from 2014 to 2019, I figured, wow, I can't believe I got here. But as time compounds on it, and year 6 and year 7 of doing the right things starts to really morph into something else, I'm at a loss of words of how good life can be. And everything that I have done does matter. As I look at the smiles of my daughter's faces, everything I did does matter. As I look at my physique, right, and the energy that I have as a 43-year-old man, where now I've become like this phenomenon in my age group, where not many people look like me at my age because of the decisions that I decided to make 6-7 years ago. Now, one thing that we have to all understand is that we can make these changes today. And just because we may not be in a place where we want to be, and you might be struggling financially, you might be struggling with your business, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be this way. It's a decision to realize that what you do today does matter. And it may not seem like it's going anywhere. For many years, it felt like I was going backwards. But little did I realize I was depositing into my experience. I was depositing into my commitments. And as I kept doing the same things over and over, the small, what seemed meaningless things, the small deposits in the day, the 1 hour in the gym every day, now created this separation from others, where I truly feel I'm in the top 1% of my age group. And as a matter of fact, my doctor confirmed that. But it was these small deposits that I decided to move into. And even though, things didn't necessarily showcase themselves right away, the vitamins I took every day, I don't know if they worked, but it seemed like a good idea that if I do good for my body, it may pay off in the future. And these are the things that we have to think about, especially when we get this cloud over us where it seems like everything is heading against us. It's conspiring against you. Your efforts are not even close to realizing any fruits. But yet having this conviction to keep going for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, if you give yourself that time frame, you can be in a different category altogether. But we have to give ourselves that opportunity. I'm looking at some of the individuals that have joined us, and I see a handful of individuals that have stuck to the game plan, and their lives has completely morphed. And it's unbelievable to witness from this standpoint, as a third party, which inspires me to continue to move forward and realize that the game is about the consistency of it all. And success is really doing the things consistently, what others only do occasionally. I'm going to repeat that. The game is about doing things consistently, what others only do occasionally. And if you can do those things, it creates a lifestyle that, it far exceeds what we ever thought was possible. But it's doing that one thing 1,000 times. That's tough. Because it's more fun. It's more exciting to do 1,000 other things, right? Because it's new. We're going to discover, does it really work? Is this the magic formula? Is this the one thing that's finally going to get us to what we want? When in fact, it's that one thing done 1,000 times that would eventually get you everything you wanted. And I have so much appreciation, for this journey. And you know this because you've seen it. For those of you that have been here, you've witnessed it for yourself in your own life. And nothing I've done is spectacular. Nothing. But it's all the hard work. It was earned 100%. There was no shortcut to this. It's not like this huge miracle happened upon my life that, now I appreciate what I have because of the hard work that I put in. You want happiness? Put in the hard work. Overcome obstacles. Challenge yourself. That's what creates happiness. Not something that was given to you. Short-term happiness, maybe. Long-term is pushing your thresholds. Setting out a goal and accomplishing it. And overcoming it. That's where the happiness comes from. And like Carolyn says, just keep going one day at a time, right? And Carolyn, you're a perfect example of that. A metamorphosis of sorts, right? Where we break these glass ceilings that we put for ourselves. And we have to understand that, It is our job. It is our duty. Yes, it matters. What I do does matter. Because what I do has now showcased to the next generation of what is possible. I'm not leaving the work for them. I had this conversation with Jermaine, and he always comes up with some great analogies. And he says, sometimes my family looks at me and asks, well, like, why are you working so hard? Like, what's the point? Why are you working so hard? And sometimes he just has to kind of shrug it off and laugh at the whole thing, right? Because they left him all that work to do. There's a lot of things that he had to learn. There's a lot of things that he had to, offset that the generation before him just wasn't capable of doing. So of course we have to work hard. Many of us weren't given that silver spoon. Many of us weren't given that knowledge of what it takes to create happiness. That money is abundant and not scarce. These are lessons that we all had to learn. But most of our lives we have to clean up the messes that the generations before us left for us. And that's why we work so hard. You don't have to explain it. But it's about digging ourselves out of that hole and not being content where we're at. And unfortunately, and it happens, and it's hard to say, but many of us, it's really easy to realize where your future is if we decide not to embark on a different path. We know where your future is. You can look at a family and realize where your future is. We can realize where your health problems will come from, where your health will be in a few years, by looking at your parents, by looking at your family lines. If you don't do something about it, you're going to end up exactly like them. You can find out where your financial situation is going to be. But again, by looking at your own family. But we avoid looking at the past, thinking that we have to rediscover everything. Let me backtrack that. Knowing that we have to rediscover everything. But it's first analyzing the past and setting a benchmark for ourselves and saying, okay, I know that if I just go through the motions, I'm going to end up just like my aunts and just like my uncles and just like my parents. Now, they're strong and healthy and well off and loving and healthy. Great. What a great foundation. Good for you. But many of us don't have that luxury because generation after generation, they avoided what was glaring at them. And you're unknowingly passing it on to the next generation. The same ceilings, the same fears, the same thresholds. Making a conscious decision by doing what you think doesn't really matter changes the dynamic of future generations. But it's what you can do consistently. What others only do occasionally is what will separate you. What will separate you from what's been predispositioned for you. Or are you going to fall into the same traps that your family members fell into? The same illnesses, the same diseases, the same financial issues, the same marital problems. These are things we have to think about. This is falling off here. So yes, what you do does really matter. And for you to be blind for what your future holds is a shame. For you not to look and analyze that the path you're going to may end up the same path as generations before you went through, what a shame. And you have to do something about it. You shouldn't be struggling the same way. Your health should be far superior. You're more knowledgeable. And they say the five people that you surround yourself with the most is what your future will represent. But we think it's friends, when in fact it's the family. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm not saying that to criticize or ridicule. But we have to analyze that. Yes, they are family. But we also have to be critical of the decisions we make when we're around that. Because I know if I would have gone down that path, I would have known exactly how I would have looked and felt at 43. If I would have stayed on the same path as I was in my 20s and 30s. But I decided to do something. I decided to go on my own path, my own journey, make my own decisions, not be pressured by what others expect from me. I owed that to my daughters. I owed that to my wife. I owed that to my business. Because most would stop by the guilt, by the loyalty. It's hard to embark on this journey. It's difficult to embark on this journey. But it really matters. Because you don't become accidentally fit. You don't accidentally become successful. You don't accidentally have a marriage that works. It requires that commitment to do the things consistently that others only do occasionally. You have to decide. Because what you want is not by accident. What you want will require the consistency over years. But the beautiful thing about this is that it conditions the next generation. It conditions those around you. It creates that happiness you've been seeking. It's when you hold back that creates the chaos in our lives. When you don't stand up for yourself in your marriage. When you don't stand up for yourself in your business. When you devalue yourself, that's what creates the unhappiness, the anxieties, the depressions. Because you're doing things against your knowledge, your knowing. So yeah, it's like I'm very proud of where I'm at. Because it was on the back of hard work. But it was a knowing that nothing is by accident. It was a knowing that if I do the small things every day, and I'm going to remind you of this consistently, that your future yourself will reap the benefits. I'm so happy at 35 years old. 35, I radically shifted what I thought was possible for me. That's where I radically shifted my perspective on what it means to take care of myself properly, of what it means to showing up as a father powerfully, what it means to be able to be there for my wife in a massive way. I could single out the day when I decided that enough was enough. And yes, there were many times where I wanted to quit. There were many times where I did question if what I was doing was the right path, because I saw so many people doing it and reaching this success much faster than I was. But I realized my results would never be by accident. It was methodical, consistent. Now it showcases in every aspect of my life. And the confidence that comes from that, it's unbelievable. Many of you are realizing this. That the feelings of being afraid they dissipate very quickly. The feelings of hopelessness are not as frequent. The anxieties don't overwhelm you as much as they used to. Feelings of depression are minimal because you understand the game of doing things consistently where others only do occasionally. So, I spend a lot of time, again, just reflecting. 43, I mean, that's, to me, at one point, I thought, wow, that's getting up there, right? But I feel like I'm just getting started. I feel like I walked into a new arena of just knowledge and wisdom. And the only thing, if there's anything to regret, is that I didn't lean into this faster. But I'm hoping that by you hearing this and being a part of what we do here at A's and Associates, you can see yourself there and realize that what you do does matter. And that is the best path to overcoming any obstacle, any negative thought, the sense of being overwhelmed, is doing the small things consistently. Because those that do it occasionally will get knocked off their path on a consistent basis. That's what becomes consistent in their lives. Is trying to get that composure back. The only thing that becomes consistent in their lives is asking the same question of how did I get here? How did it get so bad? I put up this post in our group. I'm part of the Do the Work Infinite group. And of course, many of the individuals there, I see their journey of where they started and the work they put into. But I shared a picture of me, and I simply said this: I'm at my biggest, leanest, and strongest since my bilateral chest and bicep surgery in 2017. I remember the roller coaster of emotions I experienced after my surgeries, where a simple task of showering would be so tedious that I would break down from the frustration. These are the moments that many people don't realize that you go through, that we all go through. We all have our demons. We all have our triggers. We all have our time travel moments, right? Where we go back to this really tragic point in our lives and it just overwhelms us and engulfs us into these feelings and emotions. And I remember as I'm recovering where I have little use of my arms and just being so frustrated, just preparing for a shower and how long that would take, that I couldn't even do it alone. I needed assistance from Carla. I remember watching my girls play volleyball outside and wish I could hug them tightly. Like those desires, right? Of a simple task of being able to hug tightly. Picking on my daughters, they were much younger back then. Although I spent many dark moments alone, it was never a dark season. And I think we can all agree on that, right? That when we look back at our dark moments, it was only that, a moment in time. My past experience have taught me that this too shall pass, but it's what I do during that time that determines the quality of my life once it does. The many lessons I learned during that time built my capacity to keep going. I made many moves that are serving me today. I say this because nothing ever happens to us to weaken us. It's all preparation for the abundant future ahead. Here I am at 43. Hell yes, I'm proud of the work. And I think we all have something to be proud of. And we are in a far better situation than when we started from 6 months ago or a year ago. And it may not seem like that in some situations. Maybe your finances are not where they need to be. Maybe there's problems at home. Marriage is not where it needs to be. But it's a decision of what you want, first and foremost. and not sacrificing your happiness for someone else. It's deciding to take on that path and realizing, is it worth fighting for, or is it worth moving on? But being felt trapped or just doing things because the expectation of others, they want you to, or they expect you to be in that situation, is not a form of living. It's actually a form of sacrifice. We all have the ability to look back and say, hell yeah, it was worth it. And what I do does matter. And again, it's choosing the things that most only do occasionally that you do consistently. Sergio, this was a punch in the chest. The dark cloud of life's hiccups force us to wonder if it's worth continuing or not. It's where I have built the most character, and I thank you for this reminder. It's hard. Even when things go good, it's like, we still ask ourselves, like, why am I even working this hard? What's the point? And again, those are things that are wired in our brains. We learned that from somewhere. We learned those questions from someone. Could be our parents. It could be the environment we grew up in. And I'm trying to really not block my daughters from all that. I'm just really trying to show them that, life doesn't have to have its limitations. And that's my job. I didn't want to go one more generation with these limiting beliefs. And those dark clouds are very common for all of us. But what you don't understand, what I didn't understand, is those dark clouds, energetically, everyone feels it. As a young age, as a young 5-year-old, now my 16-year-old, as a young 7-year-old, she felt when I was off. She felt when mom was off. And it creates these feelings of anxiety for them. But when they see mom and dad powerful, they too act powerful. When they see mom and dad making the right decisions and being happy and going and striving for the things that they want, they too will do the same things. But if they see you shut down, abuse your body, drink your problems away, worry day in, day out, they too will do all those things. And all we're doing is simply passing on what we learned from past generations. Yes, and the people that try to stop you with their stupid comments, I just ignore them and keep going. Those that said I couldn't keep it up over a year ago are all working out now and changed their food intake. It's a metamorphosis. And yeah, it's easier to hold someone back than to work towards where they're at. And many people understand the power of language, the power of the word. And many of us can get thrown off by someone's simple comment. And whenever we do that, they won. Whenever we do that, their convictions to throw you off were greater than you staying on track. So yes, what you do does matter. And sometimes it feels like it doesn't. But I think we all know how to get back on the path of growth and expansion. This episode deserves multiple plays. Edgar, I appreciate you. What most do occasionally, I do consistently. Say that to yourself. Thank you, Carla, for that. Say that for yourself and believe that. It's unbelievable when you become elite. You become a leader and a beacon of light and hope. And people are waiting for you to rise. We cannot become synonymous with frustration and depression and anxieties. We cannot be synonymous with that. We have to be synonymous with strength and power and courage. We owe that to those around us. So continue to ask yourself, does what I do matter? Yes, it does. We keep going. All right, guys, I want to thank you for joining me for this special episode of Mindset Mastery. Have a great day, and let's continue to be that beacon of light. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Badass Agents Podcast, brought to you by AZ & Associates and Do the Work Coaching and Consulting. You can watch this and other episodes by subscribing to our channel on YouTube or by visiting us directly at badassagents.com. And of course, you can listen to this episode and many others on your preferred podcast provider.